Greetings and welcome to Midweek Catch-Up. We greet all our viewers who are joining us on our Facebook page. Also, who are joining us on our newly launched YouTube page. We're excited, to continue with the series. I mean, this is part two of the series. We titled "The Forgotten Stories of the trauma associated or related to COVID-19." I mean, I think just to say, we started this series mainly because we felt that, it has of testimony that, although, COVID has come and gone in a sense, I'm using that just loosely. We, as a people, as society, as communities, as individuals, we haven't really had sufficient discussion about, the pain and the trauma related to that. And so we thought we should open a platform, so that we can talk, we can discuss, we can, even find healing, through this process. So last week we started the series and we had a beautiful conversation with Mrs. Mbalekwa, who shared a journey of pain, who shared a journey of trauma, but also shared the gratitude and the grace of God through everything that had happened. And so it was really a wonderful start to the series. So we continue this week, and we chat to Vuyelwa Mbalekwa, and we also unpack her own personal journey. Of course, we are talking about also as it relates to the family, but we do want to get personal. And so we'll pick up some stuff from the conversation we started last week. But at this point, I do want to welcome Sis Vuyelwa. Welcome, Sis Vuyelwa.
Hi, Kaya. Hi, thank you very much for having us.
No, thank you so much. The honor and the privilege is all ours. I mean, thank you to you, firstly. Thank you to your family for coming and sharing. You're the first family to do this. So we really do want to take our hats off for you guys to, go. It's not easy. I mean, I keep repeating this. It's not easy to share your story publicly. And so we thank God for the courage and the openness from your family, particularly the role you have also been playing in helping us to get people to come and share. So maybe as a start, let's get right to it. So maybe tell us. Well, let's start with. We'll get into the content of the series, but we want to also know you. So tell us a bit about yourself. So who's Vuyelwa? Family. We know a bit about your family, but let's also hear from you. And where you're based and what you're currently doing. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Dawn Vuyelwa Mbalekwa.
Okay.
Actually, Umama gave me the name Dawn, but she never uses it. Utata used Dawn. Vuyelwa ligama likatatomkhulu, my paternal grandfather.
Okay.
I am a daughter, firstborn child of my parents, first of five. So ndingumafungwashe. I have all the keys and all the secrets. I have two sisters and two brothers, in that order exactly. And then I have nephews and nieces. I think I've got 7 of them right now. I am child-free, I'm husband-free. So, and then I'm a teacher by training, by profession, and my calling. And I think even in the spaces I always occupy, I'm always a teacher. And now I work with an education NGO called VVOB in KZN. My offices are based in Durban. And we support professional development of teachers and educators, but through the system. So we work closely with the DBE and with the departments of education within the provinces we're working in. We don't necessarily directly work with the teachers. We support the system to support their teachers on different programs and projects. So I just moved to Durban. I was in Cape Town before. I'm still trying to find myself a church. I am a Methodist card-carrying member, standing. I was very active in Cape Town where I found my society, Sea Point Methodist Church. And I was a steward there. I also completed my lay preacher studies. So that's my extracurricular work. I am also a chorister. So
Okay.
I lead the praise and worship. I'm ngumhlabeli
Oh,
waseKwisile,
lovely. Mm,
and that brings me great joy. So I'm still trying to find myself, my space here in Durban with the move. I only moved last October 2022.
mm,
But I have got some spaces that I work in. But you know, a spiritual home, it has to be just the fit. And the day you find it, you don't even need to go back and again. You know, once you find it, like, here's home.
mm, mm,
Um, some of people will call me a social butterfly. I mean, I know my siblings, they always get a headache because apparently I've got too many friends. I know too many people across the globe. I've lived abroad for about 10 years in England, teaching there. I consider myself a global citizen and I love traveling. I love seeing places, even learning new languages. It's one of those things that are a little bit easier for me. I can learn,
mm,
at least get just auditory speaking, I can
mm,
pick up a language much quickly than most people. What else? I love to read. I'm quite a reader. Though work has slowed me down and other reading, you know, reading for functional purposes rather than reading for leisure, though I do try and squeeze it. What else? Yeah, I think I'm an optimist. Nature
mm,
I am is,
mm,
I'm more of an optimist and a happy-go-lucky. A friend of mine, when she was a few weeks ago, she said, "Hayi kaloku wena Toni, you grow and you thrive wherever you are planted. You're like a seed." So, and I think exactly, you know, nalapha Durban, I was anxious, but you know, after a few weeks, I find my feet. It's still a learning curve, no
mm,
doubt,
mm.
but it's not as difficult. So I
Oh,
hope I've given you a brief of who I am.
no, thank you to for outlining that. I mean, it's yeah, you get to know a bit more about someone in this short space of time. um, I mean, I love the fact that yeah, you mentioned that the other name was you were given by the mother and the other one paternal grandfather, so you get to share both families through your names and all of that. Intrigued by the lay preacher. I was, and the leader of worship. Oh, that's very nice. So that already tells us we kind of like talking to someone who's spiritual again. So I mean, it's so it's great to, and I think that's a core part of the work that we're doing as of testimony, that we also want to bring that element to this conversation.
Mm.
So thank you for giving us telling us a bit more about yourself. So maybe let's get right into it. I mean, I want to start off where we left off the conversation last week with your mom. Oh, you were saying you're an optimist. I was going to say, I suspect you pick a bit of that up from your mom. I found that she was quite beautiful
Yeah.
person to engage with. So your mother spoke and talk about the journey that you and your family have been. And of course, we are smiling now, but at the time, I'm sure it was quite painful. um, I mean, she spoke, she mentioned your name a couple of times. She also says at some point, your father and her were unwell, and she called you. You had to come, back home. And of course, this is at the height of COVID. I can't remember which variant it was at the time. Um, and I just wanted to maybe take us back to that point where you are called to come back home. What's going on through your mind? And when you get home, what do you find? What happens?
So she didn't say come back home. She
Hmm,
just sent a text message. So I think she sent a text message at about 2 a.m.
hmm,
It was a Sunday, I remember, Sunday, 22nd November, if I'm not mistaken.
um,
But she sent a text message and she listed symptoms that she's experiencing. She had gone to pick up my niece, Uinga, in Grahamstown. The school had been closed because there had been a COVID outbreak.
hmm,
So she had gone on the Friday to pick up Uinga. And then she sends this text message at 3 a.m. on the Sunday morning. So I see it, and I'm a planner, as a teacher of a foundation phase teacher, you need to see the whole picture. You need to see danger coming, and you need to see somebody who's going to put their fingers through those holes, the electric, and you need to have a strategy. So when COVID had struck, and I'd understood that people are not allowed to go in, so their helper can't go in. I can't ask my friends to go in. And I had told myself, I said, what would happen?
Yeah.
And so the instinct Jangomafungwashe was to say, I'll probably have to go home. So when that came through, it was prophetic. It was right at the beginning of the first lockdown in March. This call came in November. And so fortunately, we could travel by flight. The call came at 3 a.m. and, having access and a few bit of means, I could buy a ticket instantly. It was 3 a.m. By 6 a.m., my friend was there to pick me up, to take me to the airport. And I had a flight to go home at 9 a.m., same day. And I'd activated, I've got a few doctor friends, I'd activated them, and they said, now there was, the fear started to kick in. Oh, dear me, I'm going into a sick zone. Well, I didn't know that it was the pair of them who was ill. I knew Mama is definitely ill. And we assumed she'd picked it up from Inga's school or whatever.
Yeah.
But as we were engaging, when I get home, Utata is in the home as Lalin, and Mama had been with him. And then we hear that he's not well as well. So, but I'd been activated. My friends just said, mask all the time, friend, well-ventilated rooms. The patients are isolated, and then it's fine. Don't worry, you can also go in there. And they had lists of things, there were concussions that you have to do this, you have to do that.
Yeah.
Doctor friends came and dropped off medicines at the top of the, by the steps. And then this one, chest percussions, chest percussions. And then there I am banging the chest. She must go out for sunshine. And so, and one of my dad's brothers, Utatomncinci, is a medical doctor. One time I remember quite early on, he came and Umama was sitting outside. I was doing chest percussions at the back, Mqolo, and we're sitting out in the sun. And he was so happy. He was like, excellent, best healthcare you're doing here. So, and you could sit, and one of the things was to exercise, go up and down. So I don't think I actually ever thought of it. The only thing was just to make sure I'm not spreading it. So we're very cautious of no in and out. If I was asking for groceries, I don't even remember going to the shops. I would ask friends, send cash send, name, e-wallet or whatever, quick money, and then they would drop off the groceries at the top, whatever it is that I needed, so that there's that caution of not spreading it. But there, you just do what you have to do. Wake up in the morning, get the boiling water, and then you do the steaming. And my patient wasn't very agreeable. You say she's agreeable now. She wasn't agreeable. A very difficult patient. I think Utada helped at some point, because then Utada went to hospital, and then he called her and said, please, Mamela Vuyelwa, Ingati, you're getting the better care from her. Because of course the doctors were inundated, so those chest percussions. That's when Mama finally became a nice civilized patient. To take even those, and it's ugly concussions, raw onion. Who wants to eat raw onion? But we were told, do this, do that, go up and down, exercise. And she's tired, but it's like, just go up the steps and come down again, exercising. Just so I just did it. It wasn't a thought out thing. I did it. I also had to do the same thing. Whatever concussion she was having, I was also taking it. The government track and trace people came to check on us. And for some reason, I never caught anything throughout that process. But she did get really bad. Her oxygen levels were really low. And one of my friends, Dr. Spokas, she's like, Vuyi, that patient is not yours. That patient belongs in hospital.
Yeah.
But Tutatomncinci had the foresight to bring an oxygen machine, to get us to rent us an oxygen machine. So I used that. And each time I would say, one doctor would say, those levels are too low. And then I had another pushy doctor as well, who was also a COVID doctor. She's like, just keep at it, keep at it. And you're relying on that. And then there's the family, this side, because everybody wants a report as well. You know, it's funny when you're ill, people want a report. So daily, I have to send a morning report to everybody who has requested it. Yes, to family and friends. And then in the evening as well. And I have 2 reports. I've got to have a mama and then Notata who's in hospital. So I have to call the hospital, get the report there, and then everybody is calm. And on a day you don't send it, you'll get some text messages. Hi, look for you. What's the latest update? But you know, people will rally around. Yes, they couldn't come in, but I did feel one of the things I felt was the absolute support, even from a distance. I can never fault support. And I suppose I accepted that was the nature of the beast. You know, people couldn't come in. But however it is, some people would even just ufumani e-wallet. But what's this for my friend? No, look, these things, if you're buying your vegetables and all of these things, there's oranges, lemons, and you remember the price of garlic had shot up. So people will just be so generous and sending all kinds of things or food meals. It's like, oh, you must be tired of cooking. And then there's a package upstairs that you need to come and collect. So I can never say people didn't support me. I got absolute support all the way through. And even when Utata started to deteriorate, you know, the prayers, people would just send prayer messages to you. And even the strength when Mnaga could read, you know, you see the numbers and it goes down, down, down. You're like, this train stop. I know where this train is going to stop. It's a one-way stop and it's not the stop I want, but it seems like it's going this way. And then you pray, you know, to just say have acceptance, you know, and the strength to actually do right when whatever happens, thy will be done kind of prayer. So that was the whole thing. It was never a thought out. You're just in autopilot. You do what you have to do.
At the time. It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned a number of interesting things that I wanted to maybe just also, I mean, I think it's, as you say, you know, it was your parents, so you all kind of like thought, well, you don't really have any other, so someone has to go and do this, you know, whether you catch it or not, you know, and that's like a child, you know, something that comes in you as a child that you need to help your parents. But you briefly spoke about your father deteriorating and I'm thinking that I wonder how that felt as well. I mean, of course, your mother spoke to it last week as well, losing the husband, who of course is your father. That I don't know, you know, you at one level you are kind of like relieved and happy that your mother has made it. You know, if I think about the whole journey now, but at the same time you've lost your father as well, and I don't know how that, you know, as a, how you feel as a, whether it's mixed feelings or what. And maybe linked to that would be the question of, you know, you, of course you lost your father. We did pick that up from last week, and maybe tell us a bit about, you know, who he was to you, you know, and what impact that has had on you as a, I mean, it's a couple of questions that I'm asking, but I also maybe just before you speak about him and the impact, of course, on your life generally, I just wanted to touch on this point around losing the, you know, one of the parents. You know, of course, you are happy that the mother's alive, but at the same time, you know, you lose your father. How was that for you?
Okay, that one was very well thought out. So this was December. And I think he started to deteriorate at the beginning of December, like December 1, 2.
Okay.
Both of them, actually. And so when that happened, and this is after COVID, we'd had COVID from March, we had seen how it was going through families. By that time, Utadobawo had passed away, you know, lots of people had passed away within the family, and other extended families as well, or friends, or just even just hearing stories. And we knew that COVID was taking couples. So the only thing I was clear with, and you know, I'm of the firm belief, Father God, you need to be very clear to him when you talk to him.
Yeah.
And demand. I said, I don't care what you do, you will take one. All right? You're not going to leave us here from two parents to nothing.
Sure.
So that was the one brief. I was like, we will not be from two parents to zero. That's not going to happen. That one I told him in no uncertain terms. I was like, no. One thing at a time. You'll leave us with a parent. And so they deteriorate at the same time.
Yeah.
And because I put in Mama, you check her oxygen levels. Hey, Mama is at 18. Don't. I'm like, jeepers, she's not supposed to be at 8.
Yeah.
I think the normal oxygen levels are at 98%. And then worry, doctors want their patients in hospital from about 94, 93.
Then she was at 80.
Down. And I still have a booklet where because I needed to record for my doctors. I needed to record for my doctors so that they can see, you know, I can give a full report, oxygen levels at this stage, you know. So I had the little booklet.
Yeah.
So I negotiate. That one was just, by that, of course, we know you can't negotiate, but that's in my thinking. I was like, it can't happen. So we are clinging on to Mama for dear life because it was like, we couldn't lose both parents at once. And we'd seen other homes having 2 coffins, the partners, you know, it's happened. And even the carer. Yeah. So it's not a miss to me as a carer that throughout that period, we never got anything. So that was, and it was like, okay, you feel a sense of relief in that. Okay, we're still left with one. And Nyanu Tata, he started to drop. Once I told him that, no, Mama is getting better, girl. So they dropped. And then Mama started to come up again. And I mean, I remember banging her back, bless her heart. And perform, you know, those chest percussions, because I don't know, that shown the covering of the phlegm on the lungs, and just like, jeepers. So I distinctly, I suppose that's my trauma now that I'm thinking of it. I distinctly remember feeding her those concoctions, and she doesn't want to eat. Drinking those mixtures and the drugs, you know, those, I can't remember them now. Then she started to come up. Then Utata started to deteriorate. Right up on the day he was intubated. And I remember that day so well, that he was intubated. And yeah, Tatum called and he told us that he'd been intubated. And then after intubation, my tembalam just went. I was like, okay. And knowing the stories we had heard of people, of course, there were always those anomalies. And he's got a cousin of his who came back from intubation and is still alive, but isn't 100% got to. So, but this general story was, once it's intubation,
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember.
So, and I was like, okay, and I checked to Mom. I mean, during the weeks I took care of them, I never slept more than 2 hours, because you have to wake up on the hour, you put on the oxygen, and then Mama takes it off. And like, geez, why did you take it off? And you have to test again, and you have to crank up the oxygen level. So you do all of those things. But yeah, I remember. And then as it went. And then on that Sunday morning, he passed on. And then I lost to Dad. And if I come to who was he was always there, you know. For some of us in our families, in our communities, it's a cookie cutter family, you know. Mama, Utata, professionals. So he was always home for dinner. Mom was always cooking dinner. We cooked dinner. We sat around the table. talk. We're talkers, 3 girls first and then 2 boys. So, he was always there. He's the one who would, at school, we went to boarding school quite early. But Dad would pick us up, and he was a gentle guy. He wasn't, he never hit us. Mama did the hitting. Dad didn't do any of that. I remember he worked at the bank. One of those experiences back in the days, we went to see where the money was kept.
Yeah.
And I also remember, yes, no, we knew a vault. Tina went to see vault where the money was kept.
Insider.
And we also knew, yes, and also we knew when he comes back from work, back in the day, he would wash his hands because atimali ingcolile, you know, so go and wash his hands. First stop, you know, when he comes into the house. And when we go to visit him at work, he didn't like us dirty. So even now, when I go to the bank, I have to wash up and look like somebody.
Yeah.
He didn't want us dirty going to him in the bank. You know, you were fresh, then you go. He taught me to drive. He taught most of us to drive, his children. He was gentle. He was soft. Mama is a bit harsh.
He was a
He was
gentleman.
gentle. He was a gentleman. He was an absolute gentleman. He taught us to drive. He dropped us off at school, at university. We were one of the few people, Tinake Kaya, most of us all studied at Rhodes. And rector or whoever, and even the cleaners, because my parents also studied at Rhodes much later on.
Everyone knows the family.
Yes. So, oh gosh. So you can't even be a mischief, really. You have to just be. So he was there. He was a provider. He was funny. He could sing as well. Both my parents can sing. Mama is a soprano. Dad was a tenor. Choristers when we grew up. He was solid. He was steady. Ultimate provider. You know, whether he's got or doesn't. You know, I still miss him now when I don't have airtime. I'm like, oh, hey, Ganena Nati to buy me airtime. And Mama doesn't play that game. She's like, oh,
the strict parent, mom.
You go to Mom for serious things, little things where you're just like, airtime.
But I suppose even as an adult, sorry, just come. I mean, even as an adult, you know, I picked this up even from my own wife, the kind of relationship we have with the father. That even as an adult, you know, you still go to your father for guidance, for wisdom, and even all of those things. I mean, just to get a sense that has really, how has your life fundamentally changed as a result of his loss? How have you?
So definitely, I think I didn't think of the absence per se for a longest time, but moving to Durban, I missed him. So, and the entire program, I was changing companies and stuff like that. So, doing an interview, because they were professionals, they could support that process. I've never submitted a CV and conducted an interview without doing it first, that. Because, I mean, he's got those standard questions that he would have asked somewhere. Okay, so what is this? And he'll read everything through a fine-tooth comb, he edited my dissertation for my master's. He was there, he edited it. He edits if it's a serious letter I have to write, he'll edit it. He was a good writer. What are you gonna wear? Right up to finicky. Don't look like a Christmas tree. Don't look like a Christmas tree. Nice and conservative. Nice and conservative. No Christmas tree. So this was the one change in my life that's happened without him. And I felt it. Of course, Mama was there. So, and she still did exactly what she used to do. She helped me pack up in Cape Town. She was there. And even here in Durban, she came. But there's also the role how your parents split their roles. There's always that. And there wasn't this time. So I did feel that gap of him not being there.
No,
Yes.
sorry about that. I mean, I did get the sense from even last week's conversation that you had a really special, you, at least your family, it appeared to me that you're a very close-knit family, and it's coming through right again even now. I mean, we in the last few minutes, this is 5 or 6 minutes, and I want to ask you this. I mean, so ask the last question in two parts. One is, so how, of course, there was that trauma as you were even reflecting on it earlier, of having to look after your mom or your parents, and of course, the loss then. And maybe the first part of this question is how you're dealing with, maybe you've touched on it, but how you're dealing with all of that, or have you dealt with it and you're at a stage now where you kind of like can look back and say, you know what, I'm on a journey of healing, or are you, and then the other part of it is just also for other people who might have gone, because I suspect you're probably not the only person in the country or in the world who's had to go through something like that, where, I mean, you were saying, people lost parents, at the same time, and kind of like advice or to for people who are dealing with similar things and how they can kind of like deal with the same trauma. Of course, we're not saying that any of us are perfect because it's a very unique journey, but I think we can learn something from each of our individual journeys. And so it's in those two parts in the last 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, so for dealing with trauma, I've always had a good relationship with therapies in whatever form they take in. So, for instance, as it is, and leading up to COVID, if I'm a lay preacher, it means that I've got umfundisi. So that's therapist number one. I have, and I've got a therapist, a psychotherapist. You pay good money for once every 3 weeks. Ordinary times. I've always had that. I've got a personal life coach, and I also have some solid friends, who have that spiritual angle or that cognitive psychological angle where we deal with emotional bits. I think what also helped me in facing this realistically, and I can be a realist as well and pragmatic, is the fact that I could sort of rationalize and say, at the very least, I was over X years old, and this is the natural progression. I should bury him.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
rationalize it and say, no, 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 at least I should bury him. It also helped that I had done everything I humanly could. I'm the last person to see him alive because I took him to hospital.
Yeah.
I took him I took him to hospital. So mna, in what I could have done in human terms, I don't have any I should have,
Yeah.
you know. I
No
couldn't have done
regrets.
anything.
No regrets. Yeah. Hey.
No.
Mm.
And I did everything I possibly could. And even our relationship, it's not as if I was like, oh, I shouldn't have said this. Okay, I did shout. One of my last words to him was shouting at him because he didn't want to leave the village home. So then him shout, do you want to perish there alone? But besides that, our relationship was such a warm relationship. So Diayazba, there was nothing else I could have done.
So.
And I know he was proud of me. When you've got all your, whatever it is that I could have possibly done, I did.
Yeah.
I tried to do right by them while he was still alive.
Yeah.
So at least there are no regrets in that sense. And then your therapist, I go through all of these. I talk to this one, and I'm also realistic. I will feel what I feel on a day where I can't shukuma on the bed and I'm just low and I'm missing him. I will cry, I will feel, and where possible, it's a case of even saying to your boss, but actually today is just a rough day.
Yeah.
If it's possible. And then sitting in it and sharing, phoning mama and I miss Udeti, sending a message to my family group, and even some of those friends I know I can safely say I miss, and I post a WhatsApp, I miss him. And I also know la positivity ke mhlawumbe, I also know that the sun is going to shine tomorrow. It's the only thing I'm sure of. And I suppose it's that firm belief that I've got. You know, I will read, you know, whatever passages it is that will bring me. And, you know, when you're at your most neediest, there'll always be one scripture. Like, blimey, Muhammad. It just comes. It just comes. Or somebody will share, I thought you'll need this. Or ujonge, as you're scrolling through their WhatsApp statuses, and then there is a day message of the day, and it speaks and it lifts you.
Okay. Sure.
And so I hold on to all of those things. I hold on and I seek moments. I seek moments where I'm driving and then one of his stimulus Azezola plays, and they're like, daddy's song. You know, and that's all I can do is to hold on to, or I
enjoy that
see
moment.
something.
Yeah, enjoy that moment.
That's all I can do. And then I phone Mama, hey, do you know what I just saw? And I use the same language. And then we end up cackling and laughing away. Or I send in the family group WhatsApp, and all of us, hey, sihleke, sihleke. You know, so, and that's the advice. It's you see what you know reminds you that warmth, and then you move on. I can't.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't have any clear. There is no one path, and fortunately, I suppose it was a clear relationship. It didn't have complexities to it where you will be. It was straightforward. So I'm just, yeah, I'll be like, oh, daddy's song. And of course, that's another day. On another day, the same song comes on. Oh, I just want to stay in bed and be miserable. Same song. On another day, it lifts me. On another day, it deflates me. You know, it's, and yes, what happens or how it happens, but that's it. And I just embrace those feelings. So I mean, that's how I do.
No, thanks for that. I mean, sorry to, I know you were just finishing that. I'm hearing you say a number of things that I think are helpful for people. One is that we have to embrace, you know, those moments because there will be ups and downs in this kind of journey. But I'm also hearing you talk about the importance of therapy, whatever that may mean for someone. For some, as you say, it may be spiritual at a spiritual level, but also at a professional level. You know, seeing a therapist, a life coach. You mentioned a number of things which I thought were quite helpful, and I think, you know, as you say, people can, you know, decide for themselves what works for them. But it appears to me that you really have sought, because I think a lot of people start with seeking. You know, and I think your mother was mentioning it last week that the first point you have to admit and acknowledge that you are in pain, and then kind of like seek. So you know, so thank you so much. At this point, I do want to close the segment and just say thank you so much for making the time. It was indeed another wonderful conversation. Yeah, your family. Yeah, it sounds like it's a very, as you say, you know, it's not always you. You're saying something different about you. Of course, it's your mother, you know, but I had the pleasant experience of experiencing something different with her. And you talk so lovely about your father and your siblings. So thank you so much for giving the time. We will continue with the series into next week. And I do want to thank the viewers, and, you know, keep the conversation going, like the page, share, and thank you so much, Ms Vuyelwa, for joining us.
Great. Thank you very much for having me and having me share my story and my journey. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.